So my name is Doris Germain. I'm a professor in the Division of Hematology, Oncology in the Icahn School of Medicine at Mount Sinai, and we are part of the Tisch Cancer Institute. My lab focuses on breast cancer, and we have an interest in the link between pregnancy and breast cancer. We also have an interest in the protective effect of breastfeeding against breast cancer. Recently, we developed interest in the link between aging of the breast and the incidence of breast cancer. And in the same context, we know that the age of menopause also influence the risk of breast cancer. So we're currently also interested in modeling that in mice, how the age of menopause or the onset of menopause influence the risk of breast cancer. If we start with the project regarding the aging and the age of menopause and the risk of breast cancer, this is the project of Thelma Masaka, who's a PhD student in the lab. We know that the peak of breast cancer happened about 61-year-old. So it's not really peaking at 80 and 90. And so that is telling us about something about the environment of the breast immediately after menopause or in that area. The breast is at higher risk of breast cancer, and we need to understand why. And namely, we know that the age of menopause is in average 51, but for women that several women will have their menopause between 55 and 61. And this is referred as late menopause. And those women that experience late menopause have experienced two things. One good thing is that it's associated with longer longevity, but the other is that they also have an increase in incidence of breast cancer. And so what we're currently doing in the lab, in the project, is that we're really modeling the mammary gland and all of the change that happen in the mammary gland in the pre, peri, and postmenopausal phase of menopause. And we also have identified a model where the mice are actually develop a menopause later. And so we're using those mice to understand what are the modification in the mammary gland at the different age that leads to this increase in incidence of breast cancer. The other project in the lab, there's actually two projects related to breastfeeding. The first project on lactation is that we know that extended lactation in general is protective against breast cancer, but clearly not all women benefit from this beneficial effect of breastfeeding. And so to understand why some women benefit from breastfeeding or extended breastfeeding and some women do not, we need to really understand what happened at the molecular level in the breast. And one thing that we do know is that milk lactation is essentially the secretion of milk protein. And at the cellular level, we know that these heavy secretion induces some stress response. Project Metrika Chateau-Padaillé is to understand how the induction of those stress pathway influence the beneficial or not effect of breastfeeding. The project that is funded by the Chemotherapy Foundation is conducted by Dr. Charles Jenkins in the lab. We had a mouse model previously where we identified that the female that had long lactation were protected from a particular type of breast cancer. And that was the very first time that we had a model where we can dissect the beneficial effect of breastfeeding. Because in the human population, you have several factors that influence this. You're going to have race, you're going to have the length of breastfeeding, the number of children, and the length and like the frequencies. It's like half the bottle, or the always on the feeding through the breast. So there's a lot of variable in the human population that makes it very difficult to understand what the protective effect of breastfeeding is. But we had identified a mouse model where we can really, like in a genetically, environmentally, and dietary fashion, really control all of those parameters to understand what is the mechanism of the protective effect of breastfeeding. And we hypothesized that there was an hormone that are secreted by the ovaries during pregnancy that may be the mediator of this protective effect. So we first showed that in our mouse model, and subsequently, after we confirmed this in mice, we wanted to know if that was all true in human. So we established a collaboration with the Department of Obstetric, and we found and we collected the serum from 30 women that are currently breastfeeding, and some that had given birth recently but do not breastfeed. And we were able to confirm that the serum from women that are breastfeeding has anti-cancer activity, and that the presence of this hormone seems to be very important in that setting. And so this is a project that we're very excited about, and we're hoping that to publish those results. So there's currently an increased interest in a new way of targeting protein of interest. Instead of having a chemical drug, this new approach aimed at trying to degrade the protein of interest. And there's different ways by which we do that. The last project that I want to mention is the project of another PhD student in the lab, Dmitry Pokushalov, who is focusing on trying to develop a new strategy that is focused on targeting protein of interest and to mimic the effect of the protective effect of breastfeeding. And is currently working on developing this new technology. In closing, I really want to thank the Chemotherapy Foundation have been key in my career and have been supporting of our research for a number of years, and I cannot be thankful enough. And in the past, this funding has led to a clinical trial, and we certainly hope that our current effort will also lead to a clinical trial. And if you are interested in knowing more about our research, please feel free to contact